Limehouse TV, myself Theo Kane, hope everybody is good. Hold tight the Slime Alliance if you're watching this a couple of weeks in advance, and hold tight the Slime Renegades and everybody else supporting. You really do keep me motivated to want to keep this channel as prolifically dropping videos as ever. Now, a couple of weeks ago I dropped a video on this channel all about the old Dennis Fisher Doctor Who toys, and if you've not seen the video, please go back and check it. Even if you're not into that toy line, there's definitely going to be something that you can take away from it, because in that video, if you're a toy collector, you're going to be able to relate to my story where I talk about my biggest toy regret ever. One of my most traumatic experiences in this toy collecting game. But off the back of that, a lot of people started like telling me their big toy regrets, things that they missed out on and things like that. And then a couple of days ago, I put a message out on my Instagram, my Facebook, on my YouTube for people to send me your horror stories. Send me your like toy regrets. Send me your stories of when you've broken a toy that you loved and you knocked it off the shelf accidentally while you were hoovering and shit like that. And I got lots of them. Some are funny, some are sad, and some of them are like we can all relate to. So I'm going to go through them today on this episode. So let's check it out. So again, these are all horror stories that have been shared by people that watch this channel. So once again, I just want to say thank you to everybody that got involved in it. And this is very much what I like to do with Toy Talk Tuesday a lot of the time. I love to hear your opinions on it. I love to get you people that watch this show as involved as much as possible. So again, thank you for sending me these stories, because some of them made me laugh and some of them like I could relate to, and I'm sure you can too. So the first one is from Rob Peacock. Very simple, this one, and he says, during my non-collecting years, I walked past a complete G.I. Joe Defiant in the UK for £60 with a face like that. I like how he says that it's in the UK, because over here we didn't get much G.I. Joe, and we never even got it called G.I. Joe really over here. It was always Action Force, or in the early 60s, 70s and 80s it was Action Man, but it was like two dividing factors of Action Man and G.I. Joe. We got very different uniforms to the Americans and stuff like that. There was lots of similarities but very different. Anyway, that's a completely different type of G.I. Joe that he's talking about. He's talking about the 80s and 90s, like small G.I. Joe, like the 3 3/4 ones, the ones with all the different joints and things like that. The classic G.I. Joe that if you're like in your 40s, your 30s, that kind of age, they're the ones that you remember playing with as a kid. So he walked past a full Defiant. I suppose it was boxed and it was £60. And if he wasn't collecting at the time and he just saw it and thought, oh, that's pretty cool, might have thought, oh yeah, 60 quid, but I don't want it, I don't need it, it's a giant thing. And now if you're a collector, you'll know that a G.I. Joe Defiant sells for a lot more than that, a lot more than £60. You'd only have to go on eBay and look at the sold listings to see how much one goes for, but it's definitely like a lot more than £60. And we've all got those regrets. I'm sure that anybody that's watching this has those regrets where you've seen something that was a lot cheaper than what it sells for now and you didn't pick it up at the time. And they are kind of horror stories. They're ones that haunt you and they're annoying, but in a lot of ways, like, you can't buy everything that you see that you think's cool. And also some stuff for 20 years won't be worth anything. You think, yeah, it's kind of cool, I'll pick that up at some point, or it's really cool, I do like it, but I can't afford to get it now. Luckily, they're not going up in price anytime soon. I'll get it another time. And then all of a sudden there's an influx and people get into them. And I've said this before, it only takes a few people on a Facebook group to start like hyping something up and talking about it, and then other people want it. I'm guilty of it myself. I've made videos on toys that were like really obscure and weird and people didn't really care about them, and then I've been accused of like being part of the problem of why they've boosted up in value, because people seen how I filmed them, I made them look cool, I talked about them, and people watch that video and think, oh yeah, do you know what, they are pretty cool, I'm gonna get some of them. And it's very much that similar thing. It only takes a few people to post about them on a Facebook group or Instagram, and then everyone starts hyping it up. Now, G.I. Joe is not really that toy. G.I. Joe has always been popular, but just like any like classic lines from the 80s, it's slowly built and become more valuable. So a G.I. Joe Defiant is like a giant shuttle ship, and if he saw one in a box for 60 quid, I can fully understand why he lives in regret now that he didn't get it at the time. But just rest on the fact that, yo, you wasn't a toy collector at the time, and it would have been something that you didn't even know you would have wanted later, or you would have collected it at the time. We've all got them. I've talked about these many times on this show when I should have picked up a toy and then I didn't, and then it went up in price later. Next up, we've got one from YouTube, Bear Trapping Wonderland in Uwuland. Bear Trapping Uwuland, and they said, I used to have a big bag of Yu-Gi-Oh cards and my dog pissed on it, so my mum threw them in the trash without telling me. I mean, I understand that if you've got a bag of Yu-Gi-Oh cards that are made out of cardboard and a dog pissed on them, then if it got into the bag and it fucked up all the cards, there's not really any coming back from that. You're never going to get the piss out of those cards. They all shrivel up when they get wet and shit like that, like paper does. So I'm a dog lover. If my dog pissed on something like that, I couldn't hate on him. It's my dog. I love dogs more than people. I would soon get over that in a few seconds of looking at his little cute puppy dog eyes. But if he pissed on the bag and my mum just threw away the bag, knowing that I could have rinsed the bag and took them out and they'd have been fine. And that would have pissed me off, and it would have haunted me. Luckily, because they are Yu-Gi-Oh cards, they're probably one of like the lesser sought after cards if you wanted to try and get them back. I don't know that much about cards, maybe correct me if I'm wrong. Yu-Gi-Oh cards might be worth a lot of money. If they were like an old bag of Pokemon cards with some like rare shinies in there, first edition and stuff, then yeah, that would haunt us. And side note, that's one of the things that we will have all had as kids. We all had Pokemon cards, and I mean, I had like shiny Charizard first edition, and when I was a kid I got it and then I sold it for like 25 quid and thought I were rocket balling. Nowadays it would have been worth a lot more than that. But hopefully Yu-Gi-Oh cards aren't as sought after as Pokemon cards, and if you really wanted to, you could go back, collect them, and it wouldn't be as hard to get a full set as it would Pokemon cards. But I don't know, correct me if I'm wrong, if Yu-Gi-Oh cards are like worth way more than I'm thinking they are. Another message here from Lapinpori Korea, I think it is, Lapinporo Korea, over on YouTube, and they said, had the Millennium Falcon toy and some Star Wars figures as a kid, did not know what they would be worth down the line, and have long gone now. See, this is one that a lot of people messaged me, was about the Star Wars figures that they had as a kid and that they sold them. So, a good thing to know about Star Wars figures is if you want to... Sorry, I've got a hair on my nose. Not up my nose, like a hair, I don't know, something flying about in the air. If you're a collector of Star Wars figures, then the figures are still pretty easy to come by. If you wanted to get a set of Star Wars figures, you wouldn't have to pay that much to get like a general set of like general Star Wars toys. And also the vehicles, even though they're worth money and people have them in the box for a lot of money, when I've been at auction and I've seen Star Wars figures selling like for big bucks, it's always the vehicles that actually sell for less. Correct me if I'm wrong if you've got a different experience, but like when I was on that TV show filming, I was there for that huge Star Wars lot. I don't know if you watched the show Scouting for Toys that I was on. There was a TV show over in England and I was on it. It aired this year, and there was a huge Star Wars auction, and some of the figures on the cards with the rare different 12 backs and the wrong names printed on them and various logos and stuff, they were going for big bucks. But I was surprised how low some of the vehicles were actually going for, and a lot of that comes down to the fact that they're really big, they're hard to display, they're easily broken if they're knocked over and stuff like that. There's lots of little intricate pieces that can get lost and things like that. So I think a lot of people will buy them and then sell them on. They do generally seem like, out of all of the Star Wars stuff, especially like a Millennium Falcon, it does bring money and they are worth money, but they're not worth as much as you think a lot of the time. Correct me if I'm wrong, you might know completely different, but in my experiences, the don't sell for as much as the rare figures do. And that's just my experience. And all we can talk about is our own experience and stuff that we've seen. Maybe if I do more of a deep dive on it, I will see like ones that sold for a lot of money and things like that. But the Millennium Falcon in particular, sure, if you get one and it's got all its bits and it's in really good condition, it's going to be worth a couple £100 maybe. But you can get like pretty beat up ones and then buy some like extra parts and put one together for yourself if you did really want one. That's the thing. And then also Star Wars actual figures, if you just wanted the figures without the weapons and things like that, you can pick them up really cheap. Like I was at Nerd Base recently. You will have seen that video by now if you're watching this on normal YouTube. If you're watching it on Patreon, then you won't have seen it yet. But they have bins full of Star Wars figures, like bins and bins of them for a couple of quid each. So yeah, you get your rarer Star Wars figures that are always worth money. When they've got the weapons, they're always worth more money. But don't forget, Star Wars are one of the most popular toys that ever existed. They fucking made thousands of them. They filled landfills with Luke Skywalker figures because they overproduced so many of them. So if you really did want to put together a Star Wars collection and that was your main focus, you could put a really good collection together in a few months if you wanted to just spend a little bit of money and just gather the ones that maybe you had as a kid. There's always going to be ones like Amalaman and stuff like that that are worth a lot more, and Yak Face and things, but generally Star Wars figures, you can pick them up pretty easy if you really wanted to. So again, not the end of the world, not the end of the world, not a complete horror story, could be turned into a happy ending if you wanted it to. This guy comments all the time, he has no name, he's just got two dashes as his name, and he put, boxed McFarlane Spider-Man Marvel Legends figure I passed up for $20. To be fair, I was 10, they weren't as expensive at the time, still a crazy steal, but 12 years later, they're like 300 beat up and loose. So Marvel Legends are one of those things that I never really got into. I used to buy some of them as a kid. Like, well, I say a kid, I was probably like 17, 18. So I suppose I was a kid. And I used to buy them just because they had like Colossus or Man-Thing or a character that I liked, and I'd get it and put it on my shelf. And this was more when I was into like movie maniacs, and I was into like Spawn figures and things like that. When you're making that transition between being a kid with toys that you play with and being an adult with toys that you buy to display on your shelf. So I used to pick up some Marvel Legends, and there were some, like when I was doing like a lot more buying and selling, going around car boats and stuff, that I knew I could always pick up and I could flip and sell for a bit more. But I haven't kept up to date with the current market on Marvel Legends and things like that. But I mean, if you saw one when you was 10, and it's now worth $300, then welcome to the club, because the amount of toys that I saw when I was 10 that I could have picked up off a rack that are now worth $300, it's infinite. So yeah, if you see something when you're 10 years old, dude, don't worry about it. That can't really be a horror story, because everything when I was 10 is worth a shit ton more money now. Matthew Austin over on Facebook says, sold all my Transformers when I was 14, thinking I was an adult and I didn't want them anymore. And we've all done that as well. We've all done that when you've had toys that you had as a kid and sold them. We just said it a minute ago about the Pokemon cards and things like that. I've had so many toys that I sold as a kid because I've always been a toy collector, but very much like I just said a minute ago, we go through a transition as a child where we have the toys that we play with and that we love to play with as a kid, and then you get a bit older. And my thing was that I got into like wrestling figures for a bit because I was big into wrestling, WWE, which was WWF at the time. I'm showing my age now. And WCW, like, used to watch that every week, was always more WCW than WWE. And I used to like all those figures. And then I got into Movie Maniacs and I got into Spawn figures and stuff. I sold a lot of the toys that I didn't want to play with anymore. There's some that I always kept. I kept my Z-Bots, I kept my Battle Beasts, stuff that I knew I would always love. But I definitely sold a lot of stuff that I regretted and then got it back. Yeah, I mean, he sold all these Transformers. What you're gonna do? The Transformers as well, they're the kind of toy that are hard to get back in the entirety that you would have had them as a kid, because there's so many little parts. Every single Transformer car has like little doors, the tires come off, they have so many guns and all stickers that can come off and windscreens that can get cracked and things. They're the type of toy that I've got quite a few of them, but a lot of them are in a shabby state because there's so many little parts that you have to put together to complete them. So like a few years ago I did sell like a big whole of my Transformers toys because they were just so many little pieces and parts to put together, you just like get lost in it. That's why you get so many people that just collect Transformers. But again, I'm sure it's a horror story that we can all relate to. Like, we've had stuff that we got rid of as a kid. I sold all my Resident Evil figures and then like really regretted it. All the Toy Biz Resident Evil ones. I really wanted to do a video on them, and then now I've managed to collect them all back. So I'm going to do a Toy Biz Resident Evil video on this channel at some point. It was hard to get them all with all the guns and all the weapons in their entirety, but I have got them now. So yeah, like I said, a lot of this stuff, if you really want it, you can get it back. It's rare that there's something that we get rid of that we can never get back again. You're just going to have to obviously spend more money to get it back than you would have paid for as a child. This next one is fucking awful. This is by a guy, Anthony_Arcade over on YouTube, and he says that he once bought a Lego box set at Walmart. He waited to open it, and when I finally did, someone had put trash and garbage in the box. They took the Lego set, retaped it, returned the box until an idiot like me would buy it without checking and get a box of shit. When a box is closed off at Walmart, they won't even check if it's in there. Worst feeling ever. Can you imagine? And I always feel this when I see people who've got like a graded unopened box and it's sealed and it's never been opened. Even worse when they get like a shipper. Some people get like a shipper box and it'll be like, I don't know, Ninja Turtles Playmates, and it's in a big cardboard box and it'll just say that on it, Ninja Turtles Playmates, like stamped, and inside is supposedly like a full set of that run of Playmates, but it's never been opened, so they'd never know. So it could literally just have like polystyrene inside it and some little heavy bits to weight it down, and they would never know. And I always think that when people have these graded toys that they've never opened and shit, like there could be fucking anything inside that thing. But can you imagine buying like a toy and then keeping it for a while because you're like, oh, I'm gonna keep it mint in the box. Sometimes we buy stuff and you're like, oh, I'm gonna open it when I get round to it, and I'm not gonna open it now and check it. Like, I don't know, you might buy like a Gundam, like Gunpla or something like that, and you buy it, or some Warhammer, and then like you get it home and you think, oh, I'm not gonna open that yet, I'm gonna do that when I get the chance. And then like 6 months go past, by the time you open it, it's got the fucking pieces missing or whatever, and then you can't take it back because you've run out. I suppose companies like Warhammer and that would be really good if you just messaged them and told them the scenario, but like that's an example of something that we would buy and then not open straight away. And Lego is definitely like that. I know people that's bought big Lego sets and they're like, oh, I bought it at Christmas, we've still not had a chance to crack it open. So yeah, maybe when you buy Lego, always check that it's inside straight away. Just check that everything's there, because if your fucking guarantee runs out and you've come home with a box full of garbage, that is definitely going to be a horror story. That's got to be one of the worst that we've looked at today. This next one is from Evan Mox, and he says, I traded my TMNT figures for some Skylanders. I had a complete caveman Donnie with his dinosaur. So the thing about Skylanders is that when they first dropped, they brought out Skylanders and they brought out these Disney Infinity, I think it was called, and I thought, oh, this is the dopest idea ever. This combines like gaming with an action figure. You buy a toy and then you put it on this little stand, and then that toy appears in the game and you can play as it. They did the same with Lego Dimensions, and as far as I'm aware, like this is something that like was a fad that quickly died. I don't know why. As a kid, I would have fucking loved that shit. And maybe when these Skylanders came out, everybody thought the same. It was going to be like a big deal. So people were like jumping on the hype and buying them and things like that. And a toy that was worth, I don't know, 20 quid for one at the time, even though it's not worth anything now. At the time, it was worth money, and he would have had some TMNT that he thought, oh yeah, do you know what? These are worth about the same amount of money. I'll swap them. And then now, Skylanders aren't worth shit. The amount of times I go in a charity shop and I think, oh, fucking hell, toys, action figures, and I run over all excited, and it's just Skylanders. Like, I appreciate Skylanders. I love Spyro the Dragon. I played that shit loads as a kid, but they're definitely a toy that's like devalued drastically since when they came out. So that definitely must be a horror story for that guy. I feel for him. I suppose the message to take away from that is like, don't get caught up in the hype. But it is hard because you get stuff like these Marvel Legends that at the time are 20 quid to buy on a rack when this guy was 10, and then now they've gone up in price. You never know, do you? You just have to go with your gut. This guy went with his gut, and it didn't turn out great for him. But for everyone like that turns out shit, you can get one that turns out good as well. I dropped my Motu Classic Scareglow and his chest shattered, and the replacement is way too expensive. That's 1,000 Wolves over on YouTube. Do you know what? I don't even like to think about the amount of times I've knocked a toy off my shelf and broke it and stuff like that, and it makes me feel fucking awful. And the reason it makes me feel shit is because I think this toy has survived since the 70s, since the 80s. It'll have been bashed about, thrown in boxes, gone around every car boot, charity shop, toy fair. Now it's on eBay. It's made its way to me. I've got it, and it should be now in a place where it gets looked after. Imagine if you had like a rescue dog. It's had like a really shitty life, and then it comes to live with you. You clean it up and you think, I'm going to give you the fucking best life ever. That's what it's like when I get one of these toys. I get one sent me that's done the rounds for years, and now it's in my possession, in my museum, in my collection, a place where you would expect it to be looked after forever, and then I fucking knocked it off the shelf doing something and it's cracked, and it's the worst feeling ever. I've done it a few times, more times than I want to even remember. It's definitely happened, and you have to just suck it up, either glue it back together or find another one or use that as a placeholder. I'm the kind of person that doesn't like my toys broken, but if I've broken it myself and I have to glue it, I have to suck that up as a fucking man, and I have to fucking deal with that shit. I've had it before when I've ordered something off eBay as well, and it's turned up and it's been broken, and it's not even like the person's fault who sent it. They've really packaged it well, but for whatever reason, it was just destined to arrive at my house cracked. I had it with a weapon off a Power Lords figure. The guy packaged it really well, and when it arrived at my house, it had snapped, and I messaged him and I said it snapped, and he's like, oh, I'll knock you a $5 off, a $10 off, or whatever. But it's like, there's no point, is it? It's like, what's a tenner knocked off when it's like an irreplaceable weapon that's broken? It's not going to make it magically fuse back together, but it's a nice gesture. But it happens to the best of us as well. We've all knocked it off. There's a real funny story about someone knocking something off at the end of this, but I'm going to get that to the end because it's the best story out of the lot. Christopher Scanlon, a fellow toy collector and a toy dealer over on Facebook, he said to me, sold the big bootleg Toxic for $60. I never even fell out of love with Toxic Crusaders. I just wasn't thinking clearly. I'll show you what this figure is. It's over here in my cabinet, and people talk about this one quite a lot at the minute. It's cool, this figure, and it's a little bit of a mystery. So I got this years ago. Is that in frame like that? So I got this off eBay years ago, and they weren't expensive. They were all over at the time, because obviously I'm a huge fan of Toxic Crusaders. It's one of my favourite IP franchises ever, and this is like a giant version of the Playmates Toxic figure, but it's not released by Playmates. There's actually no branding on it. It's got no logo on it at all. So lots of people have lots of different theories about where this thing came from, if it's official, if it's bootleg or anything like that. But this is the toy that he's on about, and I mean, I probably paid like 25, 30 quid for this. I remember I was more pissed off because when they sent it to me, I got stung on the international postage thing, and that was more than what the figure actually cost me. It was like one of the first times that I got hit with an import fee. You never used to get that like 15, 20 years ago on eBay, and then all of a sudden they started introducing it where like you couldn't really buy anything from America without getting hit with like a 20, 30 pound import fee. So I know at the time that was an import fee that I got hit with that cost me more than the actual figure. So that's what he's on about. So that's a toy that many years ago you could get pretty fucking cheap, and now they've gone up in value. So he sold that for 60 quid, and now it's maybe a couple hundred quid. Maybe when I saw the last ones, people like selling them on Facebook groups, like selling it and make me an offer, which I fucking hate when people say PM me an offer. I'm like, you want me to buy it and fucking sell it at the same time? Fuck that. Tell me what you want for that shit. But it's an awesome figure, and you can guarantee I ain't ever going to sell mine, because I fucking love this thing. That's also a prime example of jumping on something early when you think it's cool and it's only cheap, and you get on it before anybody else does. When I was picking up Toxic Crusaders, like, nobody fucking cared about them. You tell people you collect Toxic Crusaders, they're like, what? What's them? I collect Ninja Turtles, I collect Transformers, I collect He-Man, what's a Toxic Crusader? Like, they were super fucking cult and obscure when I was collecting them as a kid. Lewis Cayley over on Facebook, a really old friend of mine, this guy, big ups to Lewis Cayley, we used to hang out when we was very fucking young. He said, I had the Independence Day alien as a kid and just threw it away one day. Do you know what? Lots of people do it, you'd be surprised. Lots of people just throw a toy away because they had it as a kid and then they don't think about it. And it's not until they get to like, in like the late 20s, 30s, maybe even when they have their own kids or they see it on TV and they think, fucking hell, I had that. My son would love that fucking alien. I threw it in the bin. Do you know what? It happens, man. People do it. If it's not you throwing it in the bin, it's usually your parents that throw it in the bin or put it on a car boot or something like that. So it happens to the best of us, Lewis, bro. Trust me. This one actually made me feel really bad. It did make me feel bad. So this guy, Christopher Hampshire, he's a guy that I've known for years through the music scene and stuff. And he wrote, I regret selling my Kenner Star Wars figures to you when times were hard. A shoebox full of them for 30 quid. You got a bargain there. I'm really sorry. I do remember this exact transaction, this exact deal when I went around his house and he had a load of Star Wars figures for sale. Bear in mind, at the time, I was a lot younger. I was probably only like 21. Not even that, maybe. And I didn't have much money myself. And he got in touch with me and said, I'm selling all my Star Wars figures. Come round and make me an offer. And I remember that we went round his house, me and Carl, and he had like loads of shit. He had all the vehicles. In fact, this is similar to what I was talking about earlier. He had loads of vehicles. He had the Hoth playset and all this stuff. Lots of bits and bats. And I was trying to make a deal on it all, and he didn't want to sell them for what I was offering. I think we was both pretty broke at the time, and I was probably offering him a low offer, and he wanted more than he could sell them for. And I remember actually saying, do you know what? For what you want for them and what I'm willing to pay, I think you should just put them all back in the loft until you've decided that you want to sell them. And I can't remember if I bought them that day or if I bought them after, but I ended up just getting the figures off him, just the figures. Yeah, it sounds like I got a shoebox off him for 30 quid. So, to him, a really shit day, but for me, a great day because I got a lot of Star Wars figures. But also rest assured, if you ever sell me anything like that, it's because I want it for my own collection. Like, I'm a collector, I'm not a big toy seller and things like that. I've done toy fairs in the past, I do them when I need to get some money together, but I only have ever sold things if it's to like fund more toy trips, fund an adventure to Japan or America, or because I'm buying something else, or I want to showcase a toy line on this channel and I'm missing a few parts, so I'll sell some other stuff to make money to buy the things I need for that toy line and things like that. So they definitely got a good home. If you sell me things, it always gets a good home. Either way, it ends up in my, it's for my collection, or very rarely it ends up in someone else's collection so I can buy something else for this channel or a trip or some shit like that. I never buy stuff just to sell it and flip it on some fucking hustling shit. I don't knock the hustle. If that's what you do, that's you, but that's not my way. Roberta Bailey over on Facebook, hold tight Roberta, she said, complete case of Matchbox cars dating back to the 60s, maybe a couple even from the 50s, given away because I was a teenager and too old for toys. It's the timeless tale, isn't it? People sell their kids toys quite often without telling them or without the kids either having a say in it. And I suppose a lot of the times because there might be a box of toys there that the kid hasn't played with for a long time and the mum and dad think, do you know what, if I tell them I'm selling that, they'll say, no, I want it, mum, and then it'll just end up not getting played with again. But at the same time, you can't help being on the receiving end of that and being a kid who were like, yeah, I didn't play with them for a bit, it didn't mean that I didn't want them. So it's always that toss-up, and I bet anybody that's an adult, that's a parent, that's watching this, that's got kids, has probably sold some stuff without asking their kid before. It's just a tale as old as time, it's the circle of a toy's life. We've all seen that fucking Toy Story 3 song when Jessie gets sold, and oh, gets me every time, yo. But yeah, cars are a thing that, like, as a kid, that's what my dad collected before he collected action figures and was a toy dealer and things like that. That's the first thing that I remember, like, having on the walls in the house when I was a child, because many people watch this, you'll know that my dad was a toy dealer and collector and stuff growing up, and he had, like, cabinets all over the house with dinkies, corgis, Matchbox cars and all things like that. And although I think the market has decreased a bit because people aren't as bothered about them anymore, the people that are into them are really into old cars. Again, if you watch that TV show that I was on, Scouting for Toys, there was at least one full episode that was all about people that collect old toy cars, and some of that shit sells for a lot of money. So yeah, Roberta, we've all got them times where our parents sold stuff, me included. I remember my dad selling things of mine and putting it on the car boot without my permission and just getting it and selling it, and yeah, they always stick. But luckily, I mean, for me personally, as an adult, I've bought pretty much everything back, so I don't have to live with that trauma. But for anybody that's parents did sell all their toys, then shame on you, even though I kind of understand why they do it. Leo Namisho over on Instagram said, nice figure, that doesn't fit in the display case. Oi, now that's not, I wouldn't say that's a horror story. I wouldn't say that's like traumatic, but it's definitely annoying. For someone like me who likes to keep all my collection displayed really nice, there's definitely been times where you've got a whole toy line and then there's just one that won't fit in the cabinet, or I've had to adjust the cabinet so that it fits. My Playmates figures have all got their weapons and accessories. They're not all complete, but they're mostly complete, and they're all in a cabinet up here. I'll get a cutaway shot of it. And some of them I've had to just squeeze down ever so slightly and slide them in just so that they fit, because I don't want to have like all my Playmates and then one that's on the shelf next to it that doesn't fit. There will be some that don't fit in there, but like the general like action figures and stuff, I like to have them all displayed together, so it is annoying when they don't fit. I recently picked up, just from a charity shop, like a sliding glass door cabinet, and the shelves were really weirdly fitting there, so I had to take them out, Dremel little holes, put new pegs in, and have them so that they were central, just so that I could put all the Ghostbusters in them that I did in that big unboxing video when I got all those old kind of Ghostbusters recently. They're now in there, but there's still a couple that don't fit. And it's always fucking annoying, so I really get that. I wouldn't say it's a horror story, because it just means that you've got a cool big toy, but it's definitely annoying when it doesn't fit in the cabinet. Last one before I get to the last final funny story I want to talk about on here. And again, so many people sent in cool stories, and I could go through them all on this channel and it would be a much longer video. And also some of them are very similar. Lots of them, like my parents sold all my Star Wars or my Transformers or my wrestling figures and things like that. But like, I thought if we at least cover one of them, we can all fucking relate. So this is the last one before I get to the one that I was telling you is a really funny story, and this is by Das Leoms over on Instagram, and he said, "For me, it has to be the horrors of bad distribution. Back before I had internet, me and my parents constantly went to numerous shops trying to find out the figures pictured on the back of other toy cards and magazines, and we never found them. Well, years later, I found out that most of them didn't have a wide release here, so all I did was waste time going to shops and being disappointed." I suppose if you try to look at that as like a glass half empty kind of view, you could be like, oh, do you know what? We didn't always get the toy we wanted, but I had great memories of going around toy shops with my parents. Maybe not. I've got friends who are really into fishing. Not my thing, I don't get it at all, but I've got friends who are really into fishing, and sometimes they'll go to the bankside for like a whole 5 days, and I'll be like, did you catch the fish you wanted? And they're like, no, but it's called fishing, not catching. So it's called toy hunting, not always toy buying. I get what he's saying though, because do you know, very similar to what I was talking about earlier when I was saying about like wrestling figures I was really into, I fucking wanted Billy Kidman. Billy Kidman was my favourite wrestler. I fucking loved the guy. And I'd never even seen that you could get a figure of it. I'd just been told that you could get a figure of it. Now, when you're a kid, other kids lie and say that they've seen stuff. They say that they've got toys that are up in the loft. You go around the house and you're like, oh, where's that toy that you said you had? Oh, it's up in the loft. My parents don't want to get it out. Don't ask them, because they'll have a go at me because they've been arguing about it. And they just lie. They never had the fucking toy. Back to the Resident Evil Toy Biz figures. I remember a kid telling me that you could get a whole police car. There was like a whole police car play set. And there wasn't. It was just lies. And they all knew that I loved Billy Kidman. They're like, yeah, I've seen it. My mate's got it, whatever. And I went all over trying to get that Billy Kidman figure. I went all over. And eventually I found it at a shop called Beatty's in Sheffield. So it did exist. I found it and I was so fucking pleased when I saw that on the shelf. It's like the only time I remember as a kid where there was a figure that I really fucking wanted, that I went round hunting in shops and then eventually just found it, just walked in one day and it was just there on the shelf. And that's a figure that I kept to this day. I've still got it in like a box of toys, because I will never sell the Billy Kidman figure, because he was so fucking hard to find and he was my guy. I wanted to fucking be Billy Kidman. So I fully get it, because there was definitely lots that didn't get released over here. And there's loads of toys like Food Fighters and Inhumanoids and things that if they did get released over here, it was in very, very low runs and it was like backstock from America. So maybe they sent over like 500 Major Munch figures, but then that was it. We didn't get any of the others, just that one. So we did get some of this stuff, but not in its entirety like we did over in America. And I don't know where this guy is based at. I didn't look on which country he's living in, but each country suffers from its own thing where they didn't get toys distributed there that we did. When I'm over in Japan, the amount of like Western toys that they really want over there that they just never got access to, but at the same time they got all the cool Bullmark and Marus on kaiju vinyl figures and things like that. So we all have toys in our countries that are not available in other places. But yeah, try and see that as like a glass half empty kind of thing, that yeah, you went round trying to find this toy and you might not have ever found it and you might have gone away disappointed, but you still had some great times toy hunting with your parents. You had parents that wanted to take you out actively hunting for that toy. Just sucks that you never got it. So the last one is a really funny fucking story. I had to read it a couple of times just to fucking fully figure out what it was on about, and I read it to my mate Malik and he was fucking pissing himself as well. So here goes. Matasaur over on Instagram says, taking off my pants for you know what, throwing them, and knocked off my Batman B&W Sean Murphy statue. Had to turn on the lights and see what had happened. Almost cried. Still give me nightmare. Taking off his pants for you know what. I think you know what he means, and I think I know what he means. Picture the scenario. He's in bed, I take it, it's night time, all the lights are off, he's took off his pants, thrown them across the room, and he's heard a clatter and a crash, and he's jumped up, turned his lights on, and see that his prized possession Batman figure has been knocked off the shelf. Basically, he was gonna have sex. I don't know if he was gonna have sex with himself, I don't know if he was gonna have sex with his girlfriend. For the sake of the story, let's say that this guy, he wasn't gonna see to himself. For the sake of the stigma of the single guy with a room full of toys, pleasuring himself, let's say that he was going to see to his girlfriend. This could be like the most clickbait episode ever. Smashed my favourite toy whilst having sex. Should we do that as the thumbnail? Tell me if you clicked on this video, because that's the fucking clickbait title that you saw. It reminds me of The Simpsons when Bart's trying to get people's attention and he just writes sex on a fucking poster, and it's like, now that I've got your attention. But this was definitely the funniest one out of all of them, that this guy was about to get jiggy with it in one way or another. He's thrown his pants across the room and heard the clatter, and then he's turned the lights on and seen whatever has crashed on the floor. It's definitely killed the fucking mood. So I do feel for Matasaur, and that was definitely my favourite message out of all of them. What I want to do in the next episode is talk about toy happy stories, toys when you found something that was a fucking steal, or you was at a car boot and you swept in before someone else and you found the fucking holy grail that you'd been after, or those kind of good ones. I've got some really good stories like that, and I want to get to them in a future episode. I would love to hear yours. I want to talk about your stories in a future episode, talking about, yeah, not the nightmares, the dream days, the days where you got the dopest figure for the cheapest price, the day when you bought a box of toys and that was in the bottom of it. I've had ones where, like, I bought a figure in a box at a car boot, I've opened it up and there's multiple ones inside and shit like that. I've got some great stories. I don't want to ruin them, but I'll talk about them in a future episode. Also, I apologise for how sweaty I look. Today is like a thundery rainstorm, so I expected it to be like a colder day. I've got my hoodie on and shit like that, and I know I'm getting a bit excited talking about toys because I always do, but yeah, I apologise if I look really sweaty and disgusting. I'm not a sweaty little wanker in my room on my own surrounded by toys. I just want to make that clear. Okay, so I remember a time when I was a kid and I'd pitched up a tent in my garden. You know, like when you're a kid and you've got a tent and you want to camp in your own back garden, you'll have like a friend stay over and you'll be in the garden and your mum will bring you some snacks out and shit like that, and you've got an extension lead with a lamp in there and shit. Like, it's camping, but you're literally just in the back garden. A lot of us did it as kids and I used to enjoy doing it. I remember as well when we used to like camp out like that, we would put the tent out in the garden, we'd put all the blankets in, and then you'd fill it with all your toys and books and shit, anything that you'd want to keep you entertained for that night. And you kind of saw it as like you was like moving out for the night, so you take all your favourite shit and put it out in the tent with you. I don't know why, because it was like a walk away to go in the house and get it, but for whatever reason, I'd set the tent up on the garden, I'd fill it with my toys, my plush toys, my teddies, all that kind of thing. I was only a little kid, fucking hell. Loads of stupid stuff that didn't need to be in there, but that's what we filled it with. And I've had a couple of nights sleeping in it, like had friends over and things, having a great time. For whatever reason, I've left the tent on the garden more nights than it should have been there. And my mum and dad will have said to me, Theo, bring the tent inside, bring your stuff in. If it rains, it's going to get ruined. And I'm like, yeah, I'll do it. Now, as a kid, and still to this day, I suffer with like a very over hyperactive brain. You'll probably notice this. I swear people think I'm like on fucking drugs and shit sometimes. I'm really not. I'm just like a hyper guy. My brain is very all over the place. It's very scatty. And as an adult, it's like definitely worked in my favor. Like having a brain that's like looking at loads of different things. It enables me to tackle like lots of different projects. It means that I don't have to sleep much. I'm always very active and motivated, and my brain very much doesn't switch off until the moment that I sleep. Like, I find it really hard to sleep. My brain's like it's got a fucking generator going at it like constantly. And as a kid, some people would call it ADHD, some people would call it like hyperactivity, some people would just call you a naughty bastard. As a kid, we were just called like the problem child. But I was always that kid that like always struggled to focus on things. I was like the little kid from Last Action Hero, where you're in a class and you're supposed to be paying attention and he's thinking of like a fucking Schwarzenegger movie that he wished existed. I was always that kid, very much the scatty-brained kid. So I was easily distracted. So my bedroom was always a mess as a kid. I would have like one thing out and I'm playing with that, and then I wouldn't put it away because I got out the next thing. It would drive my parents nuts. And even like into my teenage years, I always like found it very hard to struggle and focus, and I'd have a task to do and I'd forget it because I'd like procrastinate and end up doing something else and getting really into that. So whatever you want to call it, I was always that kid, and I'm still that guy now, but I use it to my advantage, and I learned how to dial it in to be a gift and not a curse like it was as a child. So I had this tent full of my stuff, and I knew that I had to bring it in. I'd all like my Toy Biz Spider-Man figures and things like that, and my mum and dad would have said, bring the fucking tent in, bring all the stuff in. My mum wouldn't have said fucking because she never swore. My dad swore like a sailor, so probably my dad saying that, but it has definitely said it a lot more angry. But they said like, bring all the stuff in, and I didn't, whatever. I got distracted, I was playing in my bedroom, and then it rained. It rained while I was at school, and I came back from school, and my mum were like, Theo, don't even come in the house because your dad is fuming. And the reason he was fuming is because in the tent outside, he borrowed me his action figure collecting book, and I took it in the tent, and I'd left it in the tent, and it had rained all day after they told me to bring this tent in, and it had fucking ruined the book. So when we were talking earlier about the dog pissing on the Yu-Gi-Oh cards, I had basically that exact same thing, but with torrential rain through a tent that I'd left open and shit like that. The rain had blown in, it had left a puddle inside the tent with my dad's like rare action figure collecting book in, and he fucking loved this book. He was always using it. He would use it to like piece together action figures that he was selling or collecting and things like that. And this is like way before the internet. Now, if you wanted to find like all the figures that went with a particular random like obscure line, you'd just Google them and it'd show you them all there. But like back in the day, that wasn't an option, and the only way you could find out what went with what was having these kind of action figure collecting books. And we had one that was like the Holy Grail. It was like the Bible of action figures. It was thick like this, and if this was this thick, it was in water that deep inside the tent by the time I'd got home from school, and my dad was fucking fuming. Like I didn't even want to come in the house. And I think back then people didn't realize like what it's like to have like an overactive brain like that, and now it was you didn't do that to be a cunt, you didn't do that to be a little dickhead kid, you just didn't do it because your brain was just focused on something else. And no matter how many times you got told, you'd be like, yeah, I'll do it in a minute, and then you get distracted. And I was just that kid. But either way, like I'd ruined my dad's like action figure book that he'd borrowed me like out of the goodness of his heart to look at, and I'd ruined it. So I was in the tent like outside, like taking all the stuff out, pouring all the water out, and this book was fucking so ruined. And I asked like my mum's friend that was at my house to pass me a load of like A4 paper out the printer, and I was putting it between the pages and trying to let it dry. And it did eventually dry, but it was always like that wrinkled shitty paper and things like that, and the book ended up like splitting into like 3 parts, and I felt so fucking bad. And it's something that even to this day I still think like, oh man, I was such a little shit for doing that to my dad. Now it's like something it's not even a thing, because if you really wanted to find out an action figure line, you would just go on the internet. But it was also the kind of book that you would flick through and you think, oh fucking hell, I didn't even know that line existed, or I forgot all about that line. So it was like a time when these books were like really like sought after, and it wasn't a book that you could just get. This was also a time before you could even just go on the internet and buy another one, because we'd have just done that. It was like from a toy fair or something, or like a little rare bookshop, they just had one and we had to order it in. So that's always like a traumatic toy experience that I think of, not because it was it directly reflected like an action figure that I lost out on or I broke or something like that, because I've got hundreds of them, but this is one that was like action figure related, and it fucked up due to my scatty little childlike brain. And I think to this day my dad's probably never still forgiven me. So like I said, it happens to the best of us. We've all got these stories, and it's been really interesting to know yours. And if I didn't speak about them on the video, it's not because they were shit. I'm even seeing ones pop up now, like while I was transferring a bit of footage then, because this camera died halfway through doing this video. I saw then that people had added more, and I just couldn't go through them all. But just rest assured that I really do appreciate you sending them here, and I did read through all of them. So in the next episode, like I said, I'd like to talk about some happy toy stories. Let's talk about stories when we got something fucking awesome when we least expected it, when somebody gave us something awesome, or we found something at the car boot or on the marketplace and we swooped in and got a nice bargain. Because for every like shitty story, there's always more good ones, I think. So let me know if you have some really cool stories of where you've got something that you least expected it for a really nice price, and I'll read them out here on a future episode of Toy Talk Tuesday. I hope you've enjoyed this episode today. I hope it didn't go on too long, it didn't bore you, and it wasn't me just rambling, because like I said, my brain's very overactive, and I repeat myself lots and things like that. I'm also very dyslexic, so I have to read these things like really slowly just so that they make sense. But I hope you enjoyed this video. If it's your first time here at Slimehouse TV, I'm Theo Kane. There's a whole backlog of videos that you can go back and check out if you enjoyed this one today. All different types of stuff, and a lot of it retro toy related. I also have a Patreon, like I mentioned at the start of the video, where you can get access to videos in advance, and I'm also on Patreon. So if you ever want to comment but you don't want to comment publicly, you want to hit me up in the DMs, I'm very active on there. Drop me a message, let's chop it up. Tag me in your toy room, tag me in your latest toy haul, tag me in your happy toy story. So in the meantime, I'm going to get back to editing the next video. I really do appreciate you checking this out today. Hold tight, all the Slime Alliance, the Slime Renegades, and everybody supporting us. This has been Toy Talk Tuesday on Slimehouse TV. I'm Theo Kane, and until the next video, I'm gone. Pow!